What up, boys? It's Gaz, and welcome to the Warframe video. So today is going to be a big talk fest, alright? There's going to be a lot of talking in this video. It's going to be pretty long, and I'm going to be going over my predictions for the Helminth Subsume, or whatever the heck it's called, situation with Heart of Deimos. We're getting a workshop showing which abilities they'll be picking for each frame to be put into the pool of transferable abilities to other frames on, I believe, the 14th or the 13th of August, and the Heart of Deimos update's coming on the 25th. So we have about almost 2 weeks from the posting of this video until we actually get the list of the abilities that are going to be transferable in that big infested frog in the back of the ship. So I thought we could go over a little fun little exercise right here, and I could just predict which abilities I think are going to be pulled from the frames and put into that pool. And also I want to let you guys know my recommendations on abilities for each frame that you should replace. So, for example, I'm gonna give you some preface to this though. We already know 4 abilities at the time of this video. We know that Nejah's Firewalker ability, Saryn's Molt ability, Mag's Pull ability, and Volt's Shock ability. Those are the 4 that we already know confirmed. There was an additional image that showed Desiccation from Necros, and what was the other one? Celestial Twin from Wukong, but those have actually been discredited by 2 devs. DE Sasuke and Rebecca have both discredited that and said that was an early prototype build, and those are not confirmed. So, you know, I might actually think that some of them are going to get added eventually, but we'll get into that when we get into it. So, I'll put some gameplay of a sortie and some extra stuff on the screen. Here's the list of the frames. Let's start it off. So, we're going to go in alphabetical order here. And I'm going to start with Ash. So, for Ash, I think we're actually going to get either his Shuriken ability for his first, or his Smoke Cloud, the second ability to make you invisible. And honestly, it could be Teleport, but I really hope it's not Teleport, because Teleport's actually going to be the ability I recommend to replace, because I personally don't really use the Teleport ability. It has the very niche situation of being used in Fatal Teleport setups, but for like general survival disruption gameplay, I don't usually use it, although I have heard that you can Fatal Teleport the Downless nowadays, so that's pretty nice. So if we do end up getting Smoke Cloud or Shuriken removed and put into the pool, that will mean the Seeking Shuriken augment is accessible on all frames, and with Model by Strength, that can allow full armor removal, and if any frame can do that, that could be really nice, make any frame a much better DPS, or rather Demolist killer for certain disruptions. I mean, you don't really need the armor removal nowadays in survival, but you know, it is pretty nice. And if they do make it Smoke Screen, that's just invisibility for any frame, an extremely powerful ability. The Smoke Cloud augment, I believe it's called, or Smoke Screen augment, that makes your nearby allies invisible as well, is not going to be a huge deal, although it is kind of nice. So I'm hoping it's one of those 2. I don't think it will be Bladestorm. They said there wasn't going to be ultimate abilities, then Rebecca corrected herself, not signature abilities, so we'll see if it's going to be 4th abilities. We'll do most of this video pretending that 4th abilities will not be transferable, so I'm going to say it's either going to be his 1 or his 2. It would really be unfortunate if it was 3, but I guess that would mean Fatal Teleport for anybody, which could be kind of interesting, I guess. And then if you're going to be replacing ability on Ash, I'd say either replace his 3 or his 4. I personally use his 4 with Rising Storm to build up combo really quickly. But, you know, a lot of people don't even use Bladestorm. But me personally, I would remove his 3, like, every time. Because I never use his 3. I don't even remember the last time I used his 3. It feels gimmicky, a little bit jerky targeting and all that stuff. So, yeah, I'd say remove his 3. And if you're going to replace it with another ability, I'd say some kind of damage buffing ability would be pretty hilarious. We already know that Volt's Shock will be in there, and with Shock Trooper you can get additional electric damage, combine that with a Toxin on your build already to get corrosive damage, and you'll do a ton of extra melee damage that it will be pretty ridiculous. So, yeah, there's plenty of things that Ash could use when replacing his 3 or his 4, and there's just, I mean, we only know about 4 abilities right now, but I would not recommend Molt. I wouldn't really recommend Pull on Ash. Firewalker maybe could be interesting, but yeah, not super insane. So moving on to Atlas, the second frame. I know there's gonna be a lot of talk in this video, guys. Good thing I turned the mic on. Imagine if I didn't turn the mic on. I already talked this much. With Atlas, I'm thinking it will be the ability we get added to the pool. I'm hoping it's his 3, Petrify, because it has the Or Gaze augment mod that will actually give us additional loot from killing petrified enemies. And that's really good because it's also modelable by strength. So imagine this, you have like a Necros or something with Orgaze as well. Like you replace Necros as like maybe 1 or 2 with Orgaze. You will have so much extra loot from the Bone Daddy. So that will be good. If DE doesn't really want to have Orgaze because it's really good CC on any frame, they might give us his 2, which is Tectonics, which I really hope they don't give because that ability is completely trash. But that creates a wall in front of you, and you can throw it as a boulder. The augment mod for that one lets you make, like I think 3 or 4 walls and lets you block off some areas. Really, really gimmicky. Can be kind of fun in some situations. It was a lot better on the old index map that's been removed from the game at this point. But yeah, that's what I'm expecting them to add is either his 2 or his 3. I'm really hoping it's his 3. And yeah, it's probably going to be his 2 though, because that's a really, really bad ability, and I can't see them giving us an actual good ability from Atlas. And if you're going to be replacing an ability on Atlas, I'd say either replace his 2 because it's trash, or actually, no, I'd say just replace his 2. His 4 is like serviceable enough because it petrifies nearby enemies when you cast it. So yeah, just replace his 2. His 2 is really bad. Moving on to Banshee. I think that the ability we'll get from Banshee is going to be either her 1 or maybe her 2. No, it wouldn't be her 2. Her 2 I'd call a signature ability. It's going to be either her 1 or her 3. Her 3 is an AoE stun, and I believe that's all it really does. It stuns enemies. I think that makes them vulnerable to stealth damage as well. So it's actually really good. The augment is Savage Silence. You do increase stealth damage, I believe, with that one. And her first ability is Sonic Fracture or something like that, where it's like a conal stun in front of her, and it has an augment mod that will give you armor removal. So I hope that she actually does get her 3 added. I'd say her 2 is too powerful to give to any frame, but, we could dream. So, yeah, I'd say if you're going to replace ability on Banshee, replace either her 1 or her 4. And I'd definitely go with her 4, because for, like, survivals and stuff, your 4 is completely useless. It locks you in place. The augment mod is not really as relevant nowadays. And I'd say if you're going to replace Banshee's 4, either get an invisibility skill, if we get access to any invisibility skills from maybe Ash, from Ivara, from whoever, or if that's not going to work, maybe an additional damage buff, like give her Volt's Shock. We only know about a couple, like I said. Or you know what also would be really nice on Banshee? I always use Molt on Saryn because it's very good with Augur mods. It has no cast time. We already know that Molt from Saryn is coming. That would make Banshee a lot more survivable because one of her problems in a longer survival is like you have to use your 1 pretty much to get your shield gating back with Augur mods and like brief respite. So I'd say that replacing her 4 with Molt would actually make her a lot quicker to get her shield getting back in a long survival. You wouldn't need to you probably wouldn't even need rolling guard in a lot of situations. You just you use Molt and then you get your shield back and then you could just go back to killing. So that would be really, really good on Banshee to replace her 4 with Molt. And if like I said, when we get the list of all 40 of these abilities we get in the pool, there will probably be a better one than Molt. But this is all we know right now. All right, moving on to Baruuk. I am not really a Baruuk expert, so I'd say that the ability they're probably going to give us is going to be either his daggers or his elude, which I believe lets you dodge all attacks and you're not attacking yourself. Those are the ones I'm guessing. I'm not really a big Baruuk player, but I'd say if you're going to replace an ability on Baruuk, you're going to want to replace his sleep ability, which is his 2. Although that does help you build restraint, it's not really used too much. It's used to build restraint. That's pretty much it. The sleep is and it's not like it's a bad ability, to be fair, but it's the one ability you don't really need as much. Maybe I'd say either remove his sleep or his elude, because most people just use the daggers, I feel like. So, yep, there's my recommendation for Baruuk. Not like a Baruuk expert, like I said. And like I said, I think we're going to get the daggers or elude. Elude would be really good on some other frames, so I'm interested in that one. All right, trying to spend less time on these frames because we have a lot to go here. Got Chroma for number 5. We're only 5 frames in. All right, I'm going to go a little bit faster now. I think with Chroma, let's be honest here, guys, it would be awesome if we got Vex armor, but we're going to get his trash dog breath attack where it's his 1. And it the weird thing is Chroma has a passive where it's you change your energy color and it changes the element of your dog dragon breath. So that would be interesting if we actually get it. If we do get Vex armor, holy crap, Vex armor on any frame will be really good. Almost any frame. So I hope that we do get Vex Armor or his other one, Elemental Ward, although I definitely would prefer Vex Armor over Elemental Ward. And if you're going to replace ability on Chroma, it's either going to be his 1 or his 4. And I'm definitely going to go with his 1, because his 4 at least gives you double money for Profit Taker. So I'd say the ability that you'd want to replace it with is probably going to be either... Like, if we end up getting Ember's Fireball, the Fireball augment, instead of, like, Volt's augment for his shock, will give you additional damage. If you're doing Eidolon Hunt with Chroma, Volt's shock will make it so you're getting more radiation damage for fighting the Eidolon, because you're usually using radiation setups against the Eidolons. So that would be really good for Chroma. And yeah, like I said, I hope that we get Vexed Armor, but it'll probably be his Terrible Dog Breath, and no one will ever use it. So if we do get Vexed Armor, though, like, holy crap, like I said, everyone's going to love it. Moving on to Ember. So Ember is actually a hard one to choose which ability you want to remove. I'd say probably remove her 3, which is her Ring of Fire, if you're trying to pick an ability to replace it with. I'm going to skip forward a little bit right here. I think that Nidus' second ability will be the one that we get pulled out and able to put in other frames, because that's the only one that doesn't take Nidus' stacks. If we get Nidus' 2 as an ability in other frames, that's going to be the choice for a lot of these guys, and that's including Ember as well. I'm going to say Nidus' 2 on Ember, going to pull all the enemies in one area. You can blast them with a Fireball, you can hit them all with a Burning Melee. That will be really good. And Ember's 3 is decent. It like CCs enemies, does some fire damage, but overall I'd say Fireball is more useful, with that Fireball Frenzy augment mod buffing your weapon damage with fire. And as I mentioned, the ability I think they will pull from Ember for the pool is going to be her first ability, which would give you Fireball Frenzy, additional heat damage on any of your builds. Could be really, really good. So that will be extremely meta if that is actually added. So I hope that's what they choose. Moving on to Equinox. So for Equinox, it's going to be kind of a weird thing to even talk about, because Equinox has 2 different forms, the day form and the night form, and they have different abilities in some ways. So I'm going to guess they're going to add either the day form 2 or the night form 2 into the pool of abilities, because the other ones are like an aura, I believe. Like the aura would be her 3 is like gonna make it so like there's additional power strength. I think that's what it does with the day form, and then the night form I believe is a slowing aura. I haven't used Equinox in a while, to be honest, but yeah, I think that they'll actually give us the sleep ability or the speed up ability for the Equinox. And I'd say if you're replacing the ability on Equinox, I guess it would depend which one you're playing, because the Equinox has many different play styles. I'd say maybe you remove the 3 on Equinox, and then, although you do use the 3 in some situations on day form, yeah, I'd say remove the 3 and then add... there's so many choices here. Actually, we don't even know everything, like I said. So possibly add an invisibility skill if we get any of those from like Ash or something like that. Make Equinox an invisible nuker or an invisible sleeper with the night form or the day form. So we need more information really before I go more in depth on Equinox, because they have many different playstyles, and you usually aren't going to replace the 4 of those. The thing, like maybe on like actually no, just don't replace the 4. All right, moving on to Excalibur. So I think the ability we get removed from Excalibur and usable is either going to be his blind attack. Now here's the thing, they said no signature abilities, but all of his abilities feel pretty signature to him. So it's kind of hard to predict this one as well. So I'm going to go with either Radial Javelin or his blind. And if you're to replace an ability, I'd say you're probably going to want to replace Slash Dash, which is his first ability, and any damage buffer skill should be great. Like Excalibur, his Exalted Blade already does really good damage with Condition Overload and stuff like that. So if you get a mod like Ember's Fireball Frenzy, you can buff your Exalted Blade. Like, it will be disgusting. So that sounds really, really good to replace Excalibur's 1 with like Ember's 1, and then use the augment mod from Ember, because you can use these augment mods on these frames after they get transferred over. Moving on to Frost. So I think for Frost, I don't know if they confirmed if it's going to be his second ability or not. Like I said, that one image was discredited by the devs, but yeah, it might be a Frost's second ability, Ice Wave. The augment mod is Ice Wave Impotence, which makes it so an area of cold is left after you use your Ice Wave. So that could be pretty decent for like slowing down a Demolist, because it actually is pretty good against Demolist. But overall, I don't think that ability will be used very much if that's the ability they choose with Frost. Ideally, they'd actually make it so it's Frost first ability gets transferred over, because just like with Volt and with Ember, that has an augment mod that actually buffs cold damage or gives you additional cold damage. So if they do end up doing that, that could be good for giving you some more viral damage. Maybe even combining a Toxin build into a viral build and saving on some mod slots, getting maximized damage. So if they end up going with Frost first ability, that would be great. And if they are going to, or if you're going to replace an ability on Frost, I'd say probably remove his 2, because his 1, like I said, the 1 has that augment mod that's going to give you ice damage. It also is used to burst your bubbles on Frost, so you're going to definitely want that if you're in like an organized squad. And if you're going to replace an ability with Frost 2, you could either use it's kind of hard to say. Like if we get Nidus's second ability, like I said, that would be pretty nice on Frost. You pull the enemies into one area, they're all frozen. You can do what you need to do, like smash them with a hammer. So we need to get more of a list before that. But from the ones we actually know, there's not really too many good options for Frost. I guess you could put on Volt's first ability. You could get both those augment mods and combine for magnetic damage. So you'd be the magnetic god with both the Volt augment and the Frost augment on your Frost build. Moving on to Gara, I think that this will be a pretty easy one actually to pick which ability you'll want to remove here. But at the same time, picking the ability that they let us put into the pool is going to be a lot harder, because I think they're just going to give us the crappy ability from Gara, her 3 that makes the mirror carousel. I don't like that ability at all. It's got a not that great augment mod called Spectro Siphon, where enemies killed within the mirror carousel will drop energy orbs pretty high chance. So that's probably what we're going to end up getting, because it's like her least broken ability. But hey, maybe they give us Shattered Lash, decent ability that scales with melee mods. The fact that it scales with melee mods make me think they're not going to actually give it to us. So yeah, I'd say they're definitely not going to give us her 2, because her 2 is amazing. And her 3 is like not very signature, so we'll probably end up getting that. And if you're going to replace the ability, you definitely replace that 3. And you have so many options. Like maybe an elemental, one of the Volt augment mod could be great there to buff up your melee damage. Make it so you stack up damage from your Shattered Lash explosion more. Even Nidus's 2. If they end up giving us Nidus's 2, you pull all the enemies in the room into one spot, you put your glass wall over them, and then if you didn't know this, her glass wall scales with how many enemies are hit by it, so that will give you a ton of extra damage on your glass wall, and then you'll get like a huge buff on your explosion. So that would be all good. Gara has lots of options. I'd say just remove her 3, though. Her 3 is not very widely used. Moving on to Garuda. So I think on Garuda, by the way, this new system might rekindle my love for Garuda if they give us some cool options for abilities. So for Garuda, I think the best one to replace is her 2. I don't really use her 2 very often, because Magus Repair is just better. And I think the ability that they'll give us from Garuda is either her 3 or her 2. It's kind of hard to call. But it's most likely going to be her 3. Like that one cuts your health, and you get energy from cutting your health. That one also has an augment mod. When you use your cutting your health ability, bloodletting or whatever it's called, you reload your weapons. So that could be potentially kind of cool. You actually, if they end up giving us that will be great on Chroma. So yeah, I'm going to replace my 2 or the 2 on Garuda. Hopefully, if we get Nidus's 2, I can pull the enemies into one area, then slash proc them with her 4 really quickly. So that would be great. Also makes it into the explode ball combo really easily. All right, I'm gonna go a lot faster now, because we're only on the second line. For Gauss, I think that we will either get his 1 or his 2. If they give us his 2, like, oh my god, that will be really good, because that gives you damage reduction on any frame. You can put that on the Inaros, make him even more stupid tanky. If they give us his 1, let's put that on Volt and just run really fast. And if you're gonna replace ability, I'd say you probably are going to want, like I said, it's kind of hard to pick on some of these frames what ability to replace, because all those abilities are pretty good. But I'd say probably replace his 3, and then either give him an elemental damage buff, or give him Nidus's 2 if we get access to that. Like I said, we will have to see, because like I said, there are so many abilities that they can choose from. They'll have to decide which ones they want to actually give us. So yeah, for Gauss, I think it will be either his 1 or his 2. His 3 would be kind of crappy if they gave it to us, because I don't like his 3 very much, but that's because it's the one you're going to replace. For Grendel, now Grendel is a big question mark, because all of Grendel's abilities besides his 1 involve him eating enemies. So you'd think that the only ability they can actually give us is his 1. So I'm assuming it will be his 1 that they give to us. That would be pretty amazing, because that ability actually is pretty good besides the energy drain. So, yeah, I'd say the ability they're going to give us is just because they have to. It's going to be his 1. We'll see. If they give us Grendel's 1, it will probably be on most frames for me, just to eat enemies up and then barf them out, and they take so much damage. They get their armor removed. They might have to. They're probably going to mess with the abilities, so like the ones like Limbo, Grendel, Octavia, and all that stuff can work without the other abilities in tandem. But we'll have to see. Like, I can't predict that really. We only have limited information on the 5th of August right now. So, yep, I think they'll give us the 1 because they have to, and I'd say replace his 3 with something. You know, there's lots of things I could do with. You could replace it with Grendel. Nidus 2. If we get invisibility, that would be pretty hilarious to make an invisible Grendel that just like eats the enemies because they have no idea where you are, and like there's just so many possibilities. But remove his terrible 3 because I never even use his 3. Yeah, that's that for that Grendel. Here's a fun one right here, Harrow. So I think the ability we'll get from Harrow is either going to be his 3 or possibly his 2. I hope it's his 3, because his 3 would be really nice from like Saryn. Can you imagine playing Saryn with Harrow's 3 and just giving so much energy to your teammates? Or even Mesa, because that will actually restore energy to you in channeled abilities. At least last time I checked it did. You'd have infinite energy with Mesa just by channeling all your energy, or channeling most of your energy into Harrow's 3. That actually might be too broken, so they'll probably won't do that. So it'll most likely be Harrow's 2. You sacrifice your shields for additional weapon buffs. So that would be great. And the ability I'd replace on Harrow would be actually replacing his 2 with any damage skills. So if we get whatever damage skill we get, but it'll make it so Harrow can restore energy to his teammates before they kill steal him. So, for example, if we get like Protea's orb nades or Protea's turret or something like that to kill enemies with, just give that to Harrow. Harrow is now a mini DPS that can also restore energy at the same time. So that's what I really want with Harrow. Moving on to Hildryn. So I think the ability they give us from Hildryn is probably her 3, because her 2 is really, really like too strong to be in every frame, I'd say. Really good armor removal, really good shield removal, status removal, all that kind of stuff. And the ability I would replace on Hildryn is going to be her 4, because her 4 just makes her really slow. It takes away your guns. You can only use your Balefire launcher, and it does stuff. It CCs the enemies, but like I'd rather just kill them with weapons while playing Hildryn. So predictions there. Hydroid. The ability they'll give us is either going to be his 1 or his 1 is like cannonballs or whatever, and then or his 2, I believe it is, that turns him into a wave that pushes forward. They will not give us the puddle attack. That would be hilarious, but they're not going to give us the puddle attack, so I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. And then the ability I'd replace on Hydroid is definitely going to be his 1 or his 2. The abilities I think that they're going to give to us, because turning into a puddle is pretty useful sometimes, and the Kraken is his most useful ability. The cannonballs can be okay, and they all can be decent at least, but I'd replace Hydroid's wave attack with possibly an ability that pulls in. If we get Nidus 2 on Hydroid, Tentacle Craziness, so you just pull the enemies into your Kraken and just like get extra loot from them. That would be amazing. Inaros. I think that the ability they'll give us on Inaros will either be Pocket Sand or his 2. I'm assuming it will be Pocket Sand. And the ability I would replace on Inaros is his terrible 3, the Sandstorm. I'd replace it with any damage reduction skill we get. Maybe even a damage buff would be nice. Or like, just, you know what? Inaros he'll take whatever he can get, okay? His 3 is complete trash, so I'll take it, whatever, with Inaros. Just replacing his 3. Ivara. So Ivara is one that's a little bit hard to pick. I'm assuming it will probably be her 3, the really slow invis they give to us, because I consider her quiver, her first ability, a signature ability. I think controlling the arrows and projectiles on her 2 is a signature ability, and the Artemis Bow, of course, is very signature to her. So slow invis and pickpocketing can be pretty nice. And it's really hard to pick what you want to replace on Ivara. I'd say maybe replace her 2, which is going to be the arrow control. And you replace that with you take your pick. You want more of a damage buff, you go with the Volt Augment, whatever other abilities they end up giving us. So we will see. Just replace her 2, though. Okay, from now on, I'm just going to not say what abilities you replace it with. I'm just going to say which ability to replace, okay? Khora, you're going to want to replace her 3, because her cat actually is already her passive. And I don't know if you'll be able to revive the cat if you don't have your 3 anymore, But yeah, you don't really need the 3 on Khora in the first place. Venari is a nice bonus, but definitely not necessary. And then I think the ability they'll give us is going to be her 2, which is going to rope all the enemies in together, and that'll be really good. If we don't get if we don't get Nidus's 2, if we get Khora's 2 instead, that's totally fine. Yeah, and you replace that with whatever you want. Limbo, that's a really hard one to predict. I'm going to guess Banish because everything else involves the Rift, but that would be really troll if they give Banish to everybody. So keep an eye out on that one being really troll in the future. I guess the ability you replace on Limbo will be 3, which is Rift Surge. Take your pick on to replace it with. Loki, I think they're going to give us his Decoy, which would be absolutely terrible, but let's be real, they're not going to give us Loki's Invis. If they give us any Invis, like me saying that they'll give us Ashe or Ivara's Invis is just a complete shot in the dark. I would love if they gave it to us, but that would be kind of broken on every frame of going invisible, so we'll see. I think they'll give us the Decoy, and I think you should replace the Decoy or switch Teleport. Most likely the Decoy with any ability you want. Mag, I think they're going to give us her Pull because we already know that one, and then you're probably going to replace Pull when you end up getting an ability to transfer over. For Mesa, I think they're going to give us her 1 because it's the worst ability, and in the same vein, I think you should replace her 1 because it's her worst ability. Mirage, I think they're going to give us either her 2, or it'll definitely just be her 2 because her 3 and her 1 are just like really important and really powerful. Her 2 can be actually pretty good with the sleight of hand buff, or the sleight of hand nuke. So keep an eye on that one. Maybe everyone will be a nuker. Like, if they make it so sleight of hand is the ability we get from Mirage, I'd say put that on Harrow and make him a pseudo-nuker, just like Mirage. For Necros, I think we'll either get Soul Punch or Terrify. They said they're not going to give us Desecrate, and the Shadow Army is just too awesome to give to everybody else. And I'd just say replace Soul Punch with, if we get a secondary loot skill, double up the loot on Necros, or the Nidus 2 ability to pull the enemies in together, give that to Necros as well. Necros has lots of things you could put in that first slot, and he'll be really good with this change. All right, here's one of those frames that I think it's kind of hard to pick an ability to even replace. So Nezha actually is, he has 4 good abilities, to be honest. So I'd say maybe replace his, I guess his 2 or his 1? Like, maybe even his 4. Like, you don't always want to use Nezha's 4, even though it's really good. So if you're looking to replace the ability on Nezha, I guess replace his 4 or his 2. And then the ability I think they'll get from him, we already know, is going to be Firewalker, his first ability. For Nidus, my assumption, because his other 2 abilities involve stacks, will be his second ability, Larva, which pulls all the enemies in together. That's what I'm thinking. And I think the ability you should replace is either going to be his 4. Actually, I'd say just replace his 4. His other abilities are really, really good. And his 4 is really good, too. Like, it's another frame. Like, I don't even know if I would want to transfer an ability over with Nidus. So, there's a couple frames coming up that will just be like that, where I'm like, I don't think I'd replace anything, really. Nova is kind of one of those frames. I think that the ability we'll get from Nova is going to be her second ability, the Bomb, or whatever it's called, Explosion. If they give us the 1, that would be great, too, because that's a really good ability. But I think it might be a little bit too good, and that's a pretty signature skill to Nova. To be fair, Nova has 4 signature skills, in my opinion. They're not going to give us her 4, because everyone's slowing down and exploding would be a little bit ridiculous. So I think it'll be her 2. Although you could probably consider that a signature skill as well. And if I was to replace an ability on Nova, I'd probably replace her 2 or her 1 with whatever we end up getting in this list. For Nyx, I think what the ability we'll get from Nyx is either her 1 or her 2. The 2 would be really nice. That's a full armor and shield removal with Nyx. So I'd like that one. And I'd say the ability you replace is going to be her 1, because the 1 is kind of a little bit clunky, where you mind control an enemy and shoot them to make them do more damage. So I'd say maybe that one is the one that we want to replace. For Oberon, I'm going to go with the one that we get is going to be his first ability, and then you can use a Smite Infusion Augment mod to buff radiation damage, do more damage against Eidolons, do more damage against enemies weak to radiation, etc., etc. And the ability you replace on him, I'd say probably his first or his Carpet ability. I'm going to go with the first probably, because you don't really use the first that often unless you're like doing specific setups, or if you're doing the damage buffer for Eidolons, stuff like that. Octavia, I'd say the ability we get from her, I don't know. Whatever DE picks, they're screwed, because all of Octavia's abilities are completely broken. It might be the crappy like roller ball we get. At the same vein, I think we should replace the crappy roller ball with some other ability, maybe a damage buffer, or do whatever. Like, Octavia's already good with just the 1, the 3, and the 4. So, yeah, that's where you go. Protea, I think what we'll probably get... it's hard to call on Protea what they're going to give us. The 3 would be amazing, but that gives you energy orbs, health orbs, and then ammo. That would be really good, but I think that might be too... The thing is, Protea has 3 good abilities, so we'll have to see what ends up happening. I'd say the ability to replace is definitely her 4. I don't use her 4 very often. It is a good ability, but like I said, like she has 4 good abilities, so I'd say remove the 4. For Revenant, I would remove his 4, because I don't use the 4 very often, except for my laser exterminate build. And keep in mind, when you replace the ability, it's not on all configs, so you can actually you can switch it out and then go back and forth. So that's what I do on Revenant, remove his 4, and I think the ability they'll give us is going to be his terrible Reeve ability. And that is bad when you don't have Enthrall going, so probably going to be 3 on Revenant, which, I mean, it can heal you and give you some shields back, so that's kind of nice, but yeah, I would definitely prefer Mesmer Skin on every frame. Mesmer Skin Inaros, Mesmer Skin Octavia, Mesmer Skin Ashe. Alright, moving on to Rhino. For Rhino, they'll probably just give us Charge. Iron Skin on every frame, or Roar on every frame. Probably a little bit too ridiculous for DE. And Charge is nice and not broken. So, yeah, we'll probably get Charge. And I'd say you might want to replace either Iron Stomp, or whatever, not Iron Stomp, Rhino Stomp, or his 1, because I think they're going to give us Wukong's 3, Defy. And if you want some really high Iron Skin meme levels, you'd replace his 4 or his 1 with Defy and get 1,500 additional armor. I guess maybe not the 1. If you want maximum armor, you'd replace his 4. And then you get a bunch of extra armor. For Saryn, we already know that we're going to get Molt, her second ability, which makes the illusion that is really good for shield gating. So, yeah, we already know that. And I'd say this is the one frame I would not replace anything on, period. Like, I use all of Saryn's abilities all the time. I would not even consider removing Molt, because Molt's so good at shield gating. I never die in survival. I die in survivals when I read Twitch chat, and I'm tabbed out with Saryn. I don't die any other times, because that's how good it is with shield gating. So, definitely don't want to remove anything there, and we already know that she's getting Molt. But if you don't like Molt or whatever, using like Rolling Guard and stuff, you can replace it with something else. I'd say that's the one you want to replace, if any. Probably not any. With Titania, it's kind of hard to pick which ability they'll give us. I'm assuming maybe her first ability, which gives you status immunity. And that would be really, really good at the frame after this, Trinity. But yeah, I think that they're going to give us her 1 or maybe her 3. And I'd say the ability you want to replace is going to be her 3, because I don't use her 3 very often, although it is very powerful CC. For Trin, I think they're going to either give us Link or Well of Life, because Energy Vampire in any frame sounds ridiculous, and they don't like to break the energy economy that badly. So yeah, if they give us Link, like, oh my god, that would be amazing. Well of Life, oh my god, that would be terrible. And if you're going to replace an ability, I'd say replace Well of Life. If we get Titania's Pixie Dust that gives you status immunity, Trin will be really, really good in Eidolon fights again, giving everyone immunity to the Magnetic Scream and keeping everyone healed. So that would be really nice. For Valkyrie, they're probably going to give us a Spider-Man attack against my best wishes, or Paralysis, or 3. Either one of those will totally suck. But if they give us War Cry, that would be great. With Eternal War Augment Mod, every survival mission ever will have that from now on. After that, and you want to run Valkyrie. I'd say if you're going to replace an ability, take your pick, whichever one you hate more. Ripline or Paralysis. They're both equally terrible in my opinion, with maybe Ripline being a little bit worse. For Vauban, I'm not really used to all Vauban's new abilities, but I'd say the ability you want to replace is his Photon Strike, just because it seems like it's a little bit too much work when you can just kill his enemies with a weapon. And the ability they'll probably give us is either going to be Photon Strike or Fletchet Orb, maybe. It's kind of hard to pick with Vauban what they consider a signature skill. Probably Photon Strike. For Volt, we already know which ability we're getting. We're getting his first ability, the Shock. Really good with that Volt Shock Trooper Augment Mod, giving us additional electric damage. And I'd say if you're going to replace an ability, for survivals, it's kind of hard to say. I guess you'd replace his 1 with some type of additional ability. Like, if we get anything Invis, then anything Invis will be great there. Keep in mind, Volt Speed does apply to Ivara's Prowl, so if they make it so we can have an invisible Volt, that would be amazing. But, yeah. And that's another frame. Like, if you're doing Eidolon Hunt with Volt, I don't know if I'd remove any of his abilities, besides maybe his 4. Yeah, you don't use his 4 in Eidolon Hunts, so I guess remove that one if you're in an Eidolon Hunt. Alright, for Wisp, you're definitely going to want to remove her laser, because, I mean, the laser is cool and all, but it doesn't, compared to my weapons, it's nothing compared to my weapons most of the time. So I should say replace Wisp 4 with whatever other choices we get. Like Wisp will just get a huge buff with this change, and I can't wait. Wisp might be one of the first frames I actually use this thing on to get the transferred over abilities. And as far as abilities we're going to get from Wisp, I think we're going to get either her 3 or her 2. And whichever one that is, like, will be great. Like, the 3 would be amazing. That would be, like, her 3 would be an ability I'd use on, like, Ashe, like, Banshee, all these different frames. So that's just a damage buffer and a blind. And, like, the ghost attack as well. So that's going to be really, really nice. It's a similar situation to Octavia. Whatever ability they pick, they're screwed. Because we're going to become so ridiculous with those abilities transferred over. As I mentioned a couple times before, I think Wukong's ability that we get will be his 3. As I mentioned like 3 times already, that image that said Celestial Twin has been discredited. If we do get Celestial Twin as an ability, you bet your butt I'll be using it on like pretty much everyone as an additional clone and Fashion Frame Inspector and double weapons and all that stuff. And I'd say if you're going to replace an ability on Wukong, either replace his 4 or his 3. And replacing his 4 is probably the better idea because it's not as good as normal weapons a lot of the time. And we move on to the last frame with Zephyr. Zephyr, I think she needs a rework on it, honestly, at this point. But I'd say the ability to remove on Zephyr is going to be her 2, which is the Air Projectile. I don't actually remember what it's called, but yeah, that one's not very good. And I think the ability we'll get from Zephyr is either going to be her 1 or her 2. So it would be pretty funny if they give us her 1 so we could go like, flying around all over the place on any frame. Imagine Grendel with Zephyr's 1. Or if they give us 2, like that's super boring. I don't think it even has an augment mod, so So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video, guys. That was a lot of talking, wasn't it? 36 minutes of talking. Hopefully it was fun for you. And if you have let me hear your predictions down in the comments down below, guys. I know, like, I kind of changed my mind on them giving us invis like halfway through the video. I'm like, they're not going to give us invis on every frame. That would be just completely broken. So, yeah, maybe on Ashe we'll get like Fatal Teleport or something like that, which is a little bit disappointing, but you know, it's better than nothing. So, yeah, the Dev Workshop will come out on the 14th or the 13th. Keep an eye on that one. Like I said, it's going to be 1 ability per frame, and they're picking. We don't get to pick. And yeah, the fun will begin on the 25th. Keep an eye on that Twitch channel as always. Hopefully you found the video fun, and I will talk to you guys next time, guys. Peace.